Hello and welcome to Gothy Roundtable, the official talk show of r/Goth. I'm Cadaver Kelly, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-hosts Dave and DJ Carnivorous. Hi, Dave.
Hello. How are you?
Hi, Caroline.
Hey.
Our topic this month is building a local goth scene, both virtual, which has been especially important during this pandemic, and in person, which will be very important for rebuilding in a post-pandemic world. Our guest today is a leader in my local goth scene here in Pittsburgh. She is a longtime DJ and show promoter here in the Pittsburgh area under Night Sky Production. She is the admin of the PGH Goth group on Facebook, and she hosts the Moving Shadows podcast on Mixcloud. DJ KellyA, welcome to the roundtable.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I love this show so far. It's a great thing you all are doing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And for anyone who's watching this back on my YouTube channel, I will have links to where you can find KellyA everywhere on the internet in the description. So, Kelly, I was thinking that we could start this off by talking a little bit about how you first got into DJing and promoting shows.
Sure. Do you mind if I give a little bit of background of what led up to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not going to really start with when I was born, but a couple of details about my childhood are very relevant, I think. I grew up in Utah, in the state of Utah, as a Mormon. I don't know if you, Norwegians and Danish folk are too familiar with the Mormon religion.
Heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
Okay. Well, it's very conservative. And they have something called the Word of Wisdom, which is pretty restrictive. Like, you shouldn't even drink coffee or tea or alcohol. No premarital sex. They have a lot of anti-gay policies, which they might try to dance around that if you ask them that directly, but you can be an active Mormon and be gay if you never act on those feelings, for example. So it was a very conservative, oppressive religion. I think there's some racist policies built in. African Americans couldn't have the priesthood until 1978, which was well past the civil rights movement here in the U.S. So I grew up surrounded by this, and they have a lot of kids, just like Catholics tend to. But my family was unusually large. It was a blended family of 16 children. So my mom and dad had 4. My mom, they were divorced. My mom remarried a man who already had 8, and then they had 4 more together. So even though I was raised in this environment, it never really quite made sense to me. I just kind of looked around and said, this isn't really fair. So I would say as a young teen, I started to rebel. And there was a high school dance, and I decided to be a vampire, and I dyed my hair black, and I liked it, and wanted to keep doing that. The movie Beetlejuice came out when I was in high school. I think I was 15 when I saw it, and I was like fascinated by that. I didn't really get into goth music in high school. I did have one friend who I now realize was goth. She had teased hair, always wore red lipstick, and she listened to The Cure and the Sisters of Mercy. So she played them for me a few times, and I didn't quite grasp them. But a lot of why I did start to relate to goth music was a reaction to the religion. As I started to separate myself from it, I felt more and more rejection from my family, and this caused sadness and anger that this music, I really related to the music more because of that. I think when I was a senior, I heard Tori Amos's Little Earthquakes and 9 Inch Nails' debut album, and those spoke to me. And then in my first year of college, The Cure's Wish. So I was dabbling in kind of the underground, but it really wasn't until I moved to Pittsburgh at 19 and had a big rejection by my family that I really needed the catharsis of this music. And I started working in a record store we had a used CD section so we could listen to whatever we wanted. So I listened to Floodland and Front by Front and Peter Murphy's Deep. And there was a coffee shop across the street called the Beehive. And I know, Caroline, you have met people at coffee shops as a hub. And that's really what things were like here in Pittsburgh at that time, which was 1994. A lot of people met at the coffee shop, and it was across the street from the record store where I worked. And so I was meeting people, and I met a girl who loved Bauhaus, and she had a beautiful, sunny personality. Her name was Sally, if anyone's watching who knows her. And we became good friends, and we decided to become roommates. And there was a little tiny club where somebody had started a goth night on Tuesdays, and that was the DJ was Mike Nolan, who is the singer for an industrial band called Venus and Furs that's still going here in Pittsburgh today. So it was this little, the club was called Babylon, and there was had this back room, and it was tiny, like you could fit 25, 30 people in there. And I started going and just dancing to some of those. I remember dancing to Nine Inch Nails' Happiness and Slavery and a few Peter Murphy songs, and it really was very cathartic and helped me get that angst out and the pain of feeling rejected by my family. And then I felt like I didn't have a family, and the goth scene became my family. You know, it's like I needed that on an emotional level to build that community. It became probably the most important thing in my life in my early 20s. So all of the desire to DJ and the desire to promote and the desire to connect with this music and form a family around it all came out of that. So that's kind of the pre-history.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing that. Like that's I actually didn't know that about your upbringing, and that's a really awesome story about, like, you know, connecting to the goth community in that way. And you know, I'm not someone who has like a religious community or anything like that as well. And I tell people all the time that, like, you know, a lot of people find their community at their local churches or in their like religious community. For me, I find my community in the goth scene.
Right, the Church of Goth.
yeah, the goth club
Right.
is like that's like going to church for me.
A little bit, yeah. I had
that's.
Yep, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's great when you have goth clubs that are built, they're created in actual churches. That makes it even better.
You know, beautiful design and architecture. That's for sure.
We got a question here in chat where someone asked, where's this Babylon club that was mentioned?
Oh, and they said there was one in my city too.
Yes.
So I'm in Pittsburgh. But it is funny how goth club nights get recycled, you know, and used in many different cities.
Yep.
That was the actual name of the club itself. The actual building was called Babylon. And I don't think the night had a name. It was just like Tuesday night goth night. And it lasted for a couple years. I was actually only 20. They seemed a little bit more lax about letting underage women in than underage men, I noticed.
Yeah, it was like that in the 2000s too. It was like teen girls could get into like events a little easier, or they didn't really bother with the carding so much. If you were a young pretty girl, then they're not going to bother to card you. They want you to come in because you're going to, you know, attract in like a bigger crowd.
Exactly. Unfortunately, that's how.
Yeah, we have that exact same problem here in Sweden as well.
Yeah. But speaking of the underage, I mean, there were a lot of small shows going on, and much as they are now, a lot of them were promoted by an independent promoter here in Pittsburgh named Manny Thiner. The other Kelly and I both know, who's still doing stuff today, which is great. I mean, he has done so much for the underground here. He is somebody that just, if you're touring, he will help you get a show. He'll make it happen. I mean, it may be super bare bones and a door deal, but if you want to play, he's gonna make it happen. And then if he has a conflict, he may pass it on to someone else, which is what happened to me in 1997. but I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit. How I started DJing maybe needs to come first. So I was working at this record store, and so I did 1 year at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, and then I kind of moved around the country for a year and landed in Pittsburgh and decided to go to Pitt. And so when I did that, I decided I want to be a college radio DJ. I've always kind of wanted to do that. So I did my training, and I did a semester of just kind of regular college radio. And then I said, I want to start a specialty show. So I approached the station director and I said, I think I want to do either a world music show or a goth show. And he said, well, we have somebody who wants to do a world music show, but a goth show, that would be cool. Why don't you look into that more? And I had kind of approached, even though I related to some of these bands I was talking about earlier, like my biggest passion was female singer-songwriters. Like I said, Tori Amos, Kate Bush, some of the other female singer-songwriters of the 90s. And then from that, I got into more ethereal, some Cocteau Twins, and some Susie. And so I really liked all the project bands, the more ethereal, which back then we just called it ethereal, and now people are calling it ethereal wave. But that was my original sound, and I really wanted to focus on that. And I also had a friend who liked more actual like goth industrial, like the Sisters and Rosetta Stone were like his favorites, and then a little bit more on the industrial end. So I asked him if he wanted to join forces, and we would just call it the Gothic Show. So it was half ethereal and half industrial. And his name was Brian Parker. He DJ Bats, he later became. So we did that show for a semester, and then we decided to split it. And I did a goth ethereal show called Sky Gone Black, and he did an industrial show called Beneath the Wheel. And so we kept that going, and we had some listeners. And then at Carnegie Mellon University, they also had a couple of shows, goth shows there. This was like, late 90s, so Cleopatra Records was big with their first wave of everything. It was when Sunshine Blind and Switchblade Symphony were originally getting going. Faith in the Muses' first albums. So people college age were finding all of this stuff and really latching onto it. But most of them were too young to go to the nights. And I just remember how that felt to not be able to get in and to feel shut out from this thing that was so important. That was one good thing that Manny was doing, was he was putting on all ages shows. Yep. And so that was a place that we could go to, just like today.
Yeah, my first events were also all ages shows that Manny put on. Manny, for a while in the 2010s, owned a venue in Garfield here in Pittsburgh called Garfield Artworks, and it was like a co-op DIY small music venue where he would book a lot of young bands to come and play shows. And there were some people that I knew in a band that were playing shows at Garfield Artworks. There was also a venue called Roboto. Roboto's still there, I believe. I don't think it shut down. But across from Garfield Artworks, or not far from there, there's Roboto, which was another small DIY venue like that, where there were like a lot of all ages shows where you could be underage and get in, but they were very like small, like underground, like the most DIY of DIY shows. So, yeah. But those are like the events that tend to be accessible to someone who's underage. And it's not so much what we think of with the standard like goth dance nights or the standard like goth and post-punk shows. Those in our area tend to be 21 and over. And I'm sure Dave and Carolina in Europe, there's probably some age minimums at certain events and clubs there as well. I don't know if there's like events where you have to be 18 to get in over there.
Yeah,
usually concerts are 18 since they serve like lower percent alcohol. But you can usually get in if you're 15 and have someone who's, I think it's over 25 with you. But like bars that have dance nights and stuff, that's usually over 20, since they will serve alcohol over 22%, because that's our age limits here.
Yeah, it's kind of the same here in Sweden as well. Most club nights is 18 or over, unless there's a weird situation here where a few have like 23 or 21. I think that is just specific to them themselves rather than anything specific, but 18 in general is basically anywhere where it serves alcohol.
Yeah, and here in Pittsburgh, well, I mean, in the U.S. in general, the federal drinking age across the country is 21. So most like clubs and dance nights are 21 and over. And I mean, it does make sense that these are small promoters who probably can't afford, or like the venues can't afford the liability insurance to let people in underage. It's just unfortunate that a lot of people can't get into the club scene or truly get like involved in the club scene until they're at least 21 around here. So, Kelly, I'm assuming that that was the case for you, where you were probably, had to wait till you were old enough to drink to be able to go to like the clubs and really get like actively involved in that side of the nightlife.
Yeah, there was definitely an element of that. Just as you mentioned, these all ages shows that Manny put on were kind of a lifeline for me. There was a club at the time in Uptown. It went through, I think, two different names, but one was Luciano's. And so we would take the bus from Oakland, which is the neighborhood in Pittsburgh where all the universities are located. And we would go to this little hole in the wall, and I saw some really great shows there, like This Ascension. Some of like the Test bands were touring at that time. I remember one night that d.i.y were supposed to play, and their van broke down, and they didn't show up, which has been kind of a theme. But the other bands that night were really good. The aforementioned Venus and Furs played a lot then. An local industrial band called Mace played a lot then. Their singer Peter Wellard is making music today and is in a few different local bands. It's nice to see that people continue things. But so I had those all ages shows, and I had this one little goth night that would let me in when I was 20. And then I did turn 21, and at midnight on my 21st birthday, I celebrated it at a club in Oakland called the Upstage, which is legendary. And I don't think, Kelly, you ever went, but you're aware of it because they still have reunions and things today.
Yeah, I get invites to the reunions sometimes, so I definitely want to go check one of those out. But I know that was supposed to be quite the club back in the day.
Yeah, there is a DJ who is retired but still does some stuff today called DJ Easy Lou, and he had a Thursday night goth night, but it was kind of dark 80s a little bit. Well, it was a alternative new wave night on Thursdays that was very big, and then he had a Friday night that was more goth and industrial, and so I was able to go to that when I was 21, and then I was 22 when a man who was actually only 28, but his family had been in business, and they helped him get a business going. But he decided, and he actually already owned a club in that same building called the Attic, which was just like a sports bar. Play pool, have some beers, have some bar food. But he decided to buy two other floors in the same building. It was the Strand Theater on Forbes Avenue for anybody local, and it had like 5 floors in it. It was originally a movie theater. But he decided to buy another floor and open a nightclub. And his thinking was, this neighborhood, Oakland, there's like 4 universities here. And so many people they're 20 and some of their friends are 21. They're right on this border. And wouldn't it be great if they could all go out together somewhere? So that was his thinking. And he designed this club, and it was a large open floor plan, but the bar had like a chain link fence around it. Well, I think it wasn't chain link. It was don't know what you call it. It was like these long tubes of like plastic, but you could like look through them and like talk to your friends, you know, and you could see the dance floor from the bar and then go out of the bar and go dancing. And it had a really good stage, and eventually shows started to happen there. So it started with a goth night on Wednesdays that was started by a friend of somebody who ran a night at another club called Metropole. So it started with this night, which was called Ceremony, and it was an all ages night. And so I started going to it, and all of my other college radio DJ friends started going to it too. And I think we just felt that this DJ didn't have as much of the knowledge of the music as we did. And I remember we were all in a circle, like 5 of us, talking about, wouldn't it be great if we could DJ the night? And I think that's kind of a universal thing that a lot of people in goth clubs, that conversation has been had around the world. You know, what if we can control the music? But it wasn't too long after that, I was working at the record store and I saw the owner of the club come in, and he was buying CDs for one of his techno DJs. And so I ended up striking up a conversation with him. So it was kind of a matter of being in the right place at the right time. And, you know, I told him about how I was a college radio DJ, and my other friends were too. And he asked, you know, how many people listen to your shows? And I was like, yeah, I mean, between us all, we probably have, you know, 100 or so regular listeners. And then I was like, and we've got hundreds of CDs between us. You're not going to need to buy CDs for us, you know? He decided to give us a shot. You know, I remember we went and met with him at the lounge of the club and talked about it. And we decided I would be the point person, so we'd have one person to talk to. And I remember spending that week planning the night and like figuring out a schedule of like, how are we going to rotate, you know, 5 DJs? We decided to have 2 a night, you know, so how is this going to work? We want to balance like a more goth DJ with a more industrial DJ. And the night was getting about 60 people at that time. And I remember thinking, I hope we can make this last for 3 months. And so we didn't change the name or anything. It was called Ceremony, even though we were aware that there was a night called Ceremony in Boston. And we're just like, I hope that we can pull this off and have a good time and not look like idiots and make people happy and make our friends happy, at least for a few months. So we flyered, we told all our friends, and there were 4 of us, and we were all college students. So, you know, we had people that we knew. And so that first night we got 200 people and there was more dancing, and
That's awesome.
we got applause at the end, and it was so much fun. So
that's cool. That's an amazing turnout too for first night. Wow.
It was the right time. There were a lot of people that age that were waiting for something, waiting for their friends to bring them together into this space that would let them be there. I think that's an important thing, is like, watch the zeitgeist. Are people ready for this? What do people out there need? Like, that is very important for scene building. That's how you do it, you know. I was motivated by bringing my friends together and bringing us, having a place for us, and that very strong, still a very sharp memory of being 20 and not being able to go and hear the music that I loved. So I was very behind this mission that this club owner, whose name was Ron Levick, this mission that he had of a place for college students to come out and dance. So I was very passionate about that. And like I said, we figured that night would last for 3 months. It lasted for 12 years. The philosophy was, there's 4 or 5 of us, we're all college-based. As people graduate, let's bring in more people. Let's keep it going. And that's what happened. So I was only there for the first 6 years. But this system had been set up so that it was, people who left were replaced by good people, and they kept it going for another 6 years after I left Pittsburgh and moved back to Utah to re-examine my heritage for a while.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know Ceremony was going for quite some time, because it only ended like probably a handful of years before, a few years before I started like getting out to the clubs and stuff.
2008 was the last night.
Yeah, so I started getting out to the clubs in the local scene more like 2010s era. So yeah, that was I just missed ceremony by a few years.
It's nice that there are things about its legacy that continued, and there were a lot of offshoot nights. Some of the same DJs started their own nights, or people that grew up going to those nights became DJs. Which that is really great thing to see now. So I was away for 10 years. I left Pittsburgh from 2002 until 2012. And when I came back, there were people still doing goth nights. And two of them are DJs who are active now, DJ Satirian and DJ Crash Zero. And they were people that, went to ceremony as teenagers.
Yeah.
And were
I
inspired
just
by
saw
that.
them on Thursday. I was just at Cobwebs on Thursday and talking to them.
Yeah, they are doing in-person nights again now at Belvedere's. And I went to one of their nights. So things really shut down here in Pittsburgh, and then they kind of started to open back up again. And I went to a few nights over the summer, some of which I saw you at, Kelly, which was really great to see you in person after so long. But with the Delta variant picking up again, I think a lot of people are still kind of continuing as they have been. I have to be more careful because I have a child who's too young to be vaccinated.
Right.
And now that we know that the vaccinated people can spread the Delta variant to unvaccinated people, I have to really protect him. So the last month, I've basically put myself on lockdown again, at least until he can be vaccinated, which they're saying maybe January. So it's disheartening to start to get into this mindset of, yeah, I can go out again now, and then be like, okay, no, I can't. But I feel like those few months of getting out in the sun and seeing people, it's like that can help carry me through this dark winter that's starting up again.
Yeah, like a little appetizer, so it's going to be there once your son gets vaccinated.
Yeah, it's like storing up acorns for winter or whatever, like these little nuggets of I remember it still exists. And now that we are more than a year into the pandemic, there are all these technological things that we've learned. And I started out doing Zoom dance parties when we shut down. And,
yeah, those were so much fun too. She would put on these Zoom dance parties, and everyone would be on camera dancing, and the participants were muted, but we'd be seeing each other all dressed up and dancing on camera, and we'd be typing in the chat, talking to each other. So it was a really cool concept.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I started right with Zoom and didn't go to Twitch because I really wanted that community, that interaction. So I did that for, I think, 10 months. And then in March of this year, when I could be vaccinated, I kind of lost some of my passion for that because I think a lot of people had Zoom burnout by that point. We're using it for our jobs. And I just wanted to put my energy into going out and seeing people in the real world while I could. But now that I'm headed back towards lockdown, I've been getting more familiar with Twitch slowly. I've had some friends that have done raids that they've asked me to join. And it's a different experience, I think, because it's almost more like you're running your own little TV station here with Twitch. So there's a little bit of a learning curve. And I also, I'm in my dining room, which is where I work and where my son has done virtual school for the last year. And it's where I DJ. So every time I want to DJ, I have to take everything down and rearrange the room. And so that has made me DJ less often. But I'm working on a remodeling project in my house now. I have a third bedroom that's needed some ceiling work, and I'm actively plastering it this week and trying to get that done before winter. And then I'll have a room where I can set things up and stream more often. But I think a lot of people have had to do that. They sort of turn their homes into their offices or into a nightclub. And
oh, yeah.
I feel lucky that I had just started buying some more equipment for dance nights before the pandemic, because I was doing events at a venue called the Funhouse at Mr. Small's, where Kelly has been a few times. And it's mainly set up for live music, but I wanted to do dance nights there. And so I bought my own portable dance lights. I bought a dance floor, which didn't quite work out. But I had started accumulating some of this equipment. And so I was able to just be like, okay, well, here's my dance lights, and my dining room's the club now. But a lot of people have had to do that. And that was one of the fun things about the Zoom dance parties, is seeing all the different people who turned their own houses into dance floors. A lot of them had dance lights, and just seeing them dress up and turn their basement into a club, and all the little boxes on the screen list, like you could look into 20 different clubs at once. So I think that's the thing with the technology during the pandemic, is take advantage of the unique properties of each medium.
Yeah, it's really nice to have seen how much the internet world of alternative culture have really still exploded through this pandemic. When no one has been able to go out, people have still been having massive parties and events happening through the internet.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit before we went live, how the Goth scene seems to be uniquely positioned to take advantage of that more than some other scenes.
Yeah, definitely. Caroline actually started DJing through like the virtual DJing during the pandemic. So that's how she got started up. And did you start on Twitch, Caroline?
Yeah, I did. Because I started in, was it May last year? Somewhere around there. Because I wanted to start DJing a little before the pandemic. And then it started, and I was like, shit, do I have to wait until after now? Or then I just talked to some friends, and they encouraged me, and I started playing around at home. And then finally I got the courage to start doing it in my living room on an ironing board with like a covered with a penguin blanket or another kind of blanket that's become really famous now.
That's very
Really,
DIY.
Yeah. So yeah, I've just been doing that, and it's been really fun. I haven't done much lately. I really need a new laptop, because the one I have is not meant for streaming at all. I didn't think I was going to do it at all. Like, I think it would survive just DJing, but streaming as well, not so much.
Went through the same thing. I had to buy a new laptop a few months back, which I didn't think I would need, but I had to have it for streaming. And it's like, okay, apparently this is going to drag on for a while, and this is how I DJ now. So I need this. I need to be able to stream.
Yeah, and even I got the chance to DJ during the pandemic virtually, because KellyA has had me as a guest for her stuff. The first one I did was back in November, one of your Zoom parties. I did a half DJ set, half like a guest lecture where I talked a little bit about like different subgenres. Because she asked me like, could you do something that's like sort of like your YouTube channel, but like, for like a DJ set, like had a half a DJ set, half what you do on YouTube. So I did that, and that was like really cool. That was a lot of fun. And then last month we did on your Twitch channel a Goth Around the World stream where we played music from all the different continents of the world. And I actually have that up on my YouTube channel now. So for anyone watching this back on YouTube, I'll link the video to that stream in the description for this video. But it just kind of goes to show what has come out of this like new virtual world, where all kinds of people who maybe wouldn't have done some of these things before, or didn't do these things before but maybe wanted to, are having a more accessible way to jump in and start to DJ. And so like Twitch, Zoom, there's just all these ways to build an online community. So it's not so much building a local scene, but it's building like kind of a global virtual scene, which has made the scene seem a lot more accessible in a much smaller world than it even was before.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, I've DJ'd more often because my son's right over there. He's playing Minecraft. I can watch him. If he really needs something, I can say, "I'll be right back, guys." You know. But I was only kind of going out and DJing like once a month before the pandemic because I had to worry about childcare. And I think a lot of people have that now. I mean, when you can DJ from your house, it's a lot easier. I don't have to load up my car and take it to the club and then unload at the end of the night. And I know a lot of bands feel that way as well. They've enjoyed that aspect of live streaming from their houses, although I know it's very difficult without the crowd interaction.
Yeah, and the virtual scene building is definitely very important during this pandemic. But I think you can leverage the internet to also build a local scene and kind of like gather your local community. So another thing I did want to talk with you about, Kelly, is PGH Goth, which is I think you started it as like a website blog, and also there's like a Facebook group, and so that's a group on Facebook for the Pittsburgh scene. So if anyone from Pittsburgh is watching this and isn't a part of that group, definitely join it, or people who are maybe in neighboring cities or visit Pittsburgh sometimes. If you're interested in checking out the Pittsburgh events and goth nights, I would highly recommend that group. It's really awesome. So how did you get started with the PGH goth stuff? Did it start as like the website?
Well, I think I need to back up a little bit because I kind of missed the middle of my story. I jumped from back then to now. I'm
All
not
right.
going to go into too much detail, but like we were talking about before we started, that I think the internet has always been very intertwined with the goth scene. And, when I first started doing stuff in the 90s, it was Usenet. I was active on Alt Gothic, and I was talking to people then. And some of those are people that are DJing now. And I get to see them DJing on Twitch now for like the first time. These names I've been seeing for 25 years, and I've never been able to go to their city and hear them DJ. And I finally get to experience it. It's wonderful. But even that far back, we were using the internet to find out about events, even though in-person flyering was very big, and it was a more important way to find out about shows. And even back then, I remember walking through the neighborhood of Oakland and seeing all of these show flyers on telephone poles that Manny Feiner had put up.
Yeah.
And seeing, I want to go to that show, I want to go to that show. And so my first show that I promoted at this at ceremony was Spawn Ranch, the industrial band who were on Cleopatra Records. And it was because Manny wanted to do like a bigger indie show, but they wanted to play on that same night. And so he asked me if I would do it. And, their singer, Ethan Maroulis, was also the main guy from Cleopatra Records who would send me my promo CDs and everything. And so I was like, this is important to do.
Hey, me too. Still today, Ethan sends me the promo stuff for Cleopatra.
It's another one who's still, that's a big thing, is like once you make a connection with somebody in this scene, you may still be working with them 30 years later. So
yeah, it's amazing.
Integrity and passion are very important. Like if you get a good reputation, it'll carry through. So you gotta protect that and do right by people, really.
Or it's Metropolis that Ethan's Ethan is with Metropolis Records now, and so I think Ethan sends me the promo stuff for Metropolis.
He left Cleopatra Records in LA in 2000, and then started working with Metropolis. And he still does stuff with both of them today. But he does send out all the promos for Metropolis Records today, yeah. And he's the singer of the band Noir, who I've brought to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they're so entertaining.
I really enjoy them. And he sang for Black Tape for a Blue Girl in there in between. But that was my first show, 1997, Spawn Ranch, passed on to me by Manny Feiner. And I really enjoyed it, and I got the bug. And there was a Cleopatra Records used one particular booking agent whose name is Ben DeWalt, and he is a DJ. Goes by Hellraver. He also was in an aggro band called Terror Fact later on. But he did all the booking for Cleopatra Records at that time. So that show did well. So then started asking me once a month to book a band. Hey, you want to book Switchblade Symphony? So, and we had this regular weekly crowd who came out to dance. And so we could blend the concerts and the dance nights and make it one big seamless experience. It was a really exciting time, 97 to 2002, moved back to Utah. I did some goth scene stuff there too. A little bit of guest DJing in Salt Lake City, and started putting on concerts there. I started a concert promotion business there that I did for about 8 months. And the only reason I stopped was because I got hired as a staff writer at an entertainment paper there, which was my dream. I majored in magazine writing in college. And that's what I always wanted to do. So there was a conflict of interest with being a concert promoter and being a music journalist there. So I had to stop doing that. But I did that for 2 years, moved to Dallas, Texas, to be with my now ex-husband. Didn't really go out there much, but I did get to experience the club, the church when I was there. And the one thing I did was go out to see Voltaire perform there. And that was a fun night. Then moved back here in 2012. So didn't go out for a little while, but then started going out to the nights at Cadaver. And
great venue.
Yeah. Somebody was throwing an upstage reunion, and they decided to have like a ceremony reunion hour, but like none of the original DJs were involved. So I was kind of like, what? And then it was online, and I kind of poked my head up a little bit and sort of let people know I was still around. And then I didn't end up DJing it, but they decided that another local DJ, Jim Simonic, DJ Heim of Distortion Productions, it's a record label here, more of an industrial record label here, he ended up DJing it. And then, we thought, well, if people want this, we should make it happen. We should have a real reunion. So I got the 5 original DJs together and 3 of the DJs who came after, who had been very involved. And so we had 8 DJs, and we did 2 floors of Cadaver. And we got 500 people for that. It sold out.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
well,
that's amazing.
500 people. That's an incredible turnout.
Yeah. We were blown away. We did it as a special feature of a regular night that was happening here that was getting, maybe 50, 75 people a month. It was a monthly night. So we figured, maybe we'll get 100, 120 for this. I think there's a way to kind of spin that too. We didn't start out with both floors. We sold advance tickets, and then as the tickets started to sell out the one floor, then we were able to book the second floor. So that creates like people are like, oh, it's other people want to go. Oh, it's going to sell out. I should get my ticket. So both things kind of combined. And I think this was 2014, and I think that Facebook made it easier to promote events at that point. You would start a discussion on a Facebook event page, and everybody would get the notifications about that discussion. And that doesn't happen anymore. Facebook has really tamped down on stuff a lot. So it was kind of, again, like the right time. And then that night was so much fun that 4 of us decided to start a regular club night again. And so we did that for a year at a club on the south side that was called the Lava Lounge. And the name we came up for it was Obsidian, the darker side of the Lava Lounge. So that was kind of fun. And so that was a monthly night for 1 year for 2015. And then there were technical problems at that club. That neighborhood was getting more dangerous. People didn't want to go there as much. The club didn't want to put as much money into their system. One of our DJs was bringing in his own speakers every week, which was hard. There were shootings in the area. And these 4 DJs who had all DJed 20 years earlier, we'd all had a lot of experience on our own since then. and we all had a slightly different vision for where we wanted the night to go, and so ultimately we decided to go our separate ways. But that year of collaboration, I think, was important, and a lot of people really enjoyed it. And I had some people tell me that there had been a lot of factions and squabbling and infighting when I went during the 10 years I wasn't around to see it. And this night, a lot of different groups were able to go to it and all get along. And I think it was because they had the nostalgia for the same DJs and environment that first got them into the goth scene in the 90s. You know, so it's like they were able to kind of forget everything that had happened in between and return to what it felt like to them to be 20 again. You know?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's around when I started like getting out into the club scene and stuff, but I started on the post-punk side of things. I started with you know, a lot of the people from like Play Alone, like they had events. I think the event I started with was Second Skin. So there are like in the Pittsburgh scene, there are like a lot of different like groups doing different things, and now we're starting to see more collaboration, more people coming together, and we can't really share too much of the specific details, but in April there are plans for DJ KellyA, myself, DJ Erica Scary from Play Alone Records, and Manny Thiner. We're going to be working together to promote a show here at a cool, pretty cool local venue, Spirit. So can't share too many of the details of that yet because it's not all finalized and locked down. But we're seeing more projects like that come together. I'm seeing more people talking about collaborating and starting up different nights. I know Strange Ways, which is a group that puts on like dance nights and stuff, kind of absorbed Second Skin. So they have a dance night now where it's like the old Strange Ways dance night and the old Second Skin dance night combined to have a monthly night called Technique here, which is cool because Second Skin used to be every other month, and now it's a monthly night because they combine forces. So we're seeing more, I think, collaboration with some of this like post-vaccination stuff. And we're still in a pandemic. It's a weird time. So around here, a lot of adults, or you know, adults can get vaccinated, or anyone over 16 can get vaccinated if they want to. So adults who don't have exposure to children under 16 are able to like go out
12,
more.
12 to 15-year-olds can also be vaccinated now.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It's been a few months for that.
So there are like groups of people like myself. I don't ever interact with kids in my day-to-day life, so I don't have the same like concerns of like, oh, I could spread Delta variant to someone. I work from home full time. I'm vaccinated. Everyone I know in my life that I interact with in person's vaccinated, and I'm able to like go to some events, and some people are like that. So there's some things starting to happen. But I think we won't see like the full force of everything until everyone gets vaccinated and this Delta variant stuff is under control. But I'm seeing more and more like talks of like collaborations, different like groups and different projects joining forces for after the pandemic. And that's another I think point that we were talking about hitting on here is maybe speculating about like what rebuilding in a post-pandemic world is going to look like.
Yeah, so I want to touch on that just to answer your original question about PJH Goth. So 2015, when Obsidian was happening, that was, I think, when we looked around and noticed just what you were talking about, Kelly, how there are different factions and different little scenes that have grown up over time. So that Facebook group was created because someone pointed out that there was a single night in January of 2015 where you could go out and hear Susie playing at 3 different club nights. And we were like, wait, how did this happen? You know, it's like we didn't have enough happening to have everybody competing like this. And so we looked at it and realized So there's another DJ here that you know, Kelly, Jeff Maddock, DJ Cutups, who tends to be involved in a lot of different dark scenes. And he's, I would say, a little more involved in the techno scene, but he's always been part of the dark music scene and the industrial scene and post-punk scene as well. And he had a good theory about it. He's like, you know, it's like we have this, you know, my crowd, the people who went out in their 20s, kind of stepped away from things a little bit in their 30s and are now getting going again in their 40s. And then we have this crowd of people that are more like in their 30s that came out more of the post-punk revival scene. And then the third one, I forget who they were, but it was a little more maybe full on death rock, or even just maybe coming at it from the indie side of things, like the dark indie rock. But it's like, you can find Joy Division from a lot of different avenues, you know? And so we just realized that none of them knew about the other. And so at that time I was like, well, let's start a Facebook group, and it'll be event focused, so people can always know when something is happening. And it was important to me as a promoter to make sure that other promoters knew that I was already doing something on this night, so they didn't plan something on their night, and vice versa. You know, I wanted to know that their night was happening, so I could keep that in mind when I was planning my events. So the internet, always been there, always bringing us together, especially important during the pandemic. You know, the ways in which we connect has changed over time, from Usenet in the late 90s through, you know, the MySpace era.
Oh God, don't remind me.
My heyday. Dave and I, that's us.
Yep. Still have a few friends from there that I still meet and communicate on a regular basis from that time.
Yeah, I do have some old MySpace buddies that we still like follow each other on social media and stuff.
Originally for me, it was LiveJournal, like around 2000. I guess I forgot to say, so there was Usenet, and then there was, in the 90s, and there was an email list called the Pittsburgh Goth list. And so a lot of people at universities were on this, and there would be these long threads and long flame wars. And Manny Feiner was often at the center of that. He was passionately advocating for everything to be about the music. And other people would sometimes say, like, well, and we butted heads a little more at that time, because I really thought that a night should be about the whole experience. You know, like a goth night to me is not just about the music, even though the music is the most important thing, but it is also about fashion, aesthetics, community, comfort. Do you have a comfortable chair? Do you have air conditioning? Are the chairs set up so that you can have a good conversation with people? Can you find a good drink to take that edge off? You know, all of these things blur together to have a great in-person experience. And I think that's one of the things that people are missing by only having online, is just the way that everything can come together in person. It's the energy flow and the instincts that you can get in real life. So that's been our challenge here. You know, how do we create that the best that we can in a virtual world? And it's nice to see people always coming up with technological innovations. Like, this is great because we're on Twitch, but we're all having a conversation in real time. So thank you, Dave, for discovering OBS Ninja to help with that.
Yeah, it's been a journey, and a really enjoyable one.
Yeah, it's so great that we're having this conversation, and two of us are in the United States, and you know, one's in Norway and one's in Denmark, right? And we can talk about goth around the world and connect this way.
Sweden, actually.
Sweden,
yes.
Sweden and Norway. Okay.
Yeah, both
Sorry
Central Europe. And
Scandinavians.
Scandinavians, yeah, exactly.
Oh, you got your gold.
Let's see.
Oslo. We did goth around the world last month, and Kelly did take over and do like a Scandinavian portion of it. You did Scandinavia, I did Eastern Europe.
Cool.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, I talked about the foreign resorts. I love them.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
They're great.
But I don't think I talked about AEX, but I enjoy them. Familiar with them? They're kind of. I think the members are maybe 40s or 50s, but the band is pretty new, and they're a little more electronic female vocals. Who else?
Dave, you said Coffin Cats is local to you, right?
I
Are
don't
they
remember.
Swedish?
I think so. Yeah, I think they are local here, but I'm not 100% certain. But I do know that Les Fleurs du Mal are local to me. That I am 100% certain of, as
Then
I've met
comes
them many times.
Silence right there.
Yeah, exactly. Then comes Silence.
Yeah, I think they were playing in Prague like last night. I was supposed to be there, but no.
Yeah, and it's amazing, like this online stuff, how it brings people together. And it really can though be leveraged to help congregate your local scenes, and kind of like circling back to PGH Goth. I think the most helpful resource within the PGH Goth group, there's a in the announcements section of the group, which Facebook groups have like an announcements tab every month. Kelly starts a thread and she says, here are the event listings for this month for, August of 2021. And everyone drops links to their events, their DJ dance nights, the shows they're promoting, and virtual stuff too. If there's people in the local scene who are doing stuff online, they can, like, I posted the link to this discussion we're having right now in the August 2021 PGH Goth events thread. So those threads are amazing for kind of consolidating our local scene and getting everyone in one central location to talk about what events are happening, where and when. And I think it's the perfect example of how online community building can be leveraged to get a local scene together.
Yeah, I think you always have to take advantage of whatever means of communication you have. And I'm glad you find that announcement thread helpful. I can't take credit for deciding on that exact format. I remember, when we realized there needed to be a group like this, there was one particular girl who I honestly can't remember her name now, but she was talking about how we needed something like that, and she started the group. She started that format. And then but she didn't have enough of a reason in her own life to keep it going and to keep working on it. I remember I would ask her a few times. I was like, "Could you unpin the announcement thread from 3 months ago or last month and pin this one so that people will see this event I'm about to post?" And I felt like I shouldn't be the main person because I am a promoter. Other people do events. Is it a conflict of interest? Back to this kind of journalistic integrity from being a researcher and a writer, and this culture of trying to be unbiased. I didn't want to come across as promoting my own events above other people's unnecessarily. And you got to avoid even actually, it's funny, this is a Mormon phrase my mom used to say. You got to avoid the appearance of evil. But that same rule applies in journalistic ethics. You want to avoid the appearance of conflict of interest, and if there is one, you need to disclose it. Like you may see an article say, disclaimer, this writer is connected to this person in this way, so that you understand where the biases are coming from. And that kind of training is very important in today's world. I think a lot of people are missing that, and that's why we get these claims of fake news and the rise of propaganda and all that. Anyway, I'm digressing. The point was,
we could have a whole episode on the ethics of information sharing.
Yes, and that's something I really appreciate about you, Kelly, is that you seem to have a very firm grasp on that, and your research skills are so great. You weren't around for the first wave of some of this music that you talk about. But I was, and you are extremely accurate. So that really shows, that's a testament to your research.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. But so my point was that I thought it would be a conflict of interest for me to run this group as a promoter. But eventually I realized I cared about it enough as a promoter to keep it going. So as long as I think I keep that in mind, like the mission is I want to be aware of all the other events so I don't book over top of them and they don't book over top of mine. And I want, the community to be aware of everything so that we can build a scene together. So if I try really hard to keep those ethics in mind, then the group can continue to be what it's meant for and not, my personal promotion avenue only.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we have talked about your background, how you got into DJing, show promoting. We've talked a little bit about like virtual online community building. But we will one day be, through the woods globally with this pandemic. Fingers crossed, hopefully sooner rather than later. But with it's going to take probably a while, a few years before we have like a global control on it. But in local scenes all around the world, there's going to be a period of rebuilding. So maybe we can talk a little more about like kind of like the practical logistics of putting together dance nights and shows, like how to find venues and partner with venues, how to partner with other DJs, start up dance nights, how to bring in bands, book bands, how the business end of things work. I think that could be that's really going to be the meat of like building an in-person scene that will be good information for anyone who does want to get out there and start doing these things once they're in a position to, in whether it's like post vaccination or post pandemic. We're going to have a whole new world of hopefully promoters and DJs getting out there and helping to contribute to what the new scene will look like out there in person. So let's start with venues. What advice would you give for anyone watching this on how to find and partner with venues for dance nights or for shows?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned technique and how that was the combination of a couple of existing club nights and how they joined forces. The pandemic has shaken up everything. I really enjoyed when some of those Strange Way people were putting on events in a park. Avonworth Park has that beautiful pavilion, which you hear about a dance night happening in a park, and you're like, oh, it's in a park. And
it was amazing. It was a magical event.
Oh yeah. I was like, oh, I better wear, really sensible shoes. We're going to be like on grass, whatever. But no, it was like a real wooden dance floor. I think they must have ballroom dance lessons there or something. I mean, I think it's, used for weddings. But yeah, it was this beautiful dance floor. And I believe the Strange Way crew, they seemed like they brought in their own lights and speakers and everything. I don't know all of the details of how they made it work technically. But it was wonderful. And it was open air outside. And it was at a point where, I went to two of them. The first one, people were still wearing masks, and the second one, almost everybody was vaccinated. And I think we dropped the mask mandate here. And that was the one where I saw you, Kelly. What was that? Was that June?
Yeah, that was in June. And the night was called Strange Skin, or the event was called Strange Skin because it was the combination of Strange Ways and Second Skin. I actually have some footage of that in my June vlog on my YouTube channel. So I'll link that in the YouTube description for this video. For anyone in the chat, I'll find it and drop the link. But that was something, and that's a good idea for anyone who, if you have the climate to support that, like if you can do outdoor events, if you have the weather for it, once people start getting vaccinated, if you still have concerns about like the virus and the pandemic, that could be a good way to do like a transition period until things are safe enough to do indoors again, is outdoor events. And what they did with this park event in this pavilion was really creative. So I'm going to drop the link to that video so anyone who's interested in that can kind of get a little bit of an idea of what that looked like.
Yeah.
Also a good thing for anyone who wanna do an event that is all ages or something that doesn't have like alcohol involved or something like that, or bring your own, etc. To just have something outside on an area where anyone can be, basically.
Yeah. This night they actually had people from a local bar who had a liquor license come in and were selling cocktails. So, I believe I heard that. So the main guy who does Second Skin, has a connection to the people who run that park. So that made it a little easier. Community connections, however you can use them, is helpful. I know, Caroline, so your husband works in a bar, and that's how you were able to get a night going. There's usually some kind of connection like that. Somebody in your friend group has an inn somewhere, and you share those resources. My inn was working at a record store across the street from the club and running into the owner. So I think that's what it takes in the post-pandemic world too, is look around and see what are the connections, what are the resources we have now, and they're all different now. I think we can find the silver lining about having things shaken up if we keep our eyes open. What opportunities are there now that there weren't before? I'm really enjoying seeing people do hybrid club nights. I've seen a few Twitch DJs who they're going back to the regular clubs now, and they're live streaming on their Twitch channel from the actual club, and that's really exciting to see. I know there was a controversy about did they let the patrons know that they're going to be on camera, and that is something you have to watch out for. But I mean, we've always had to worry about that with filming. But yeah, that was a DJ that I've watched a lot. DJ Slave One out of Denver, and she's very entertaining. And it was thrilling to tune in and see her back in her club. I think it's the Milk Bar, for the first time in 18 months. And I was so excited for her. I was like, she's in her club. I'm so envious. And everybody got to see the people dancing. Just maybe, I think it was just their feet that were on camera. But to relive, to experience that vicariously was exciting. And I think that we will see more of that in the post-pandemic world. More people live streaming from clubs and blending the virtual in person. I think there are some people that have concerns about that. They're like, are we going to see less people going out in person because they can experience it from their homes instead? I think that's a concern, but I think there's a lot of ways to blend it. Maybe it will be more common to charge for events if you're at home, and there'll be enough extra virtual elements to make it more exciting. It's fun to see all the different tools people are using on Twitch. The bits and the cheers and the different windows, and when we did our Goth Around the World stream, KellyA at least wanted to have a little bit of the music video showing, just to add that extra element. There's so many ways to connect, and we just need to find them. Like we were saying before we started, it's like Goth finds a way.
Yeah. Yep. And I think when it comes to finding and securing venues for events, even if, like Kelly said, tap into your, people locally, whether they're Goths or anyone else in your life that see if anyone knows someone who owns a bar or a restaurant or any type of space that would be viable for an event. And if not, you can get creative. Most bars or restaurants or, a community park could be a venue space. So just shop around, maybe see if you could talk to management or the owners of local bars and restaurants and parks until you find one that's willing to partner with you. I mean, I'm sure even if you don't have a connection that if you go in and try to talk to the owners or management of, bars, restaurants, especially smaller ones, that maybe don't get a lot of foot traffic, if you're going to bring in a crowd of goths that are going to come patronize their bar and spend a lot of money, they might be willing to let you use their space to host an event.
Exactly. I'll get into a few of the more specific logistics, but honestly, that's really the most important thing is have you already started to form a community that needs a place to gather because they want to interact with each other? And that struck me about, your original story, Caroline, about, I think you said you started some meetups in a coffee shop and people started talking to each other that way originally, right?
Yeah.
So once those people wanted to hang out together, then they want to experience the music together.
Yeah, and I found a lot of them through like Facebook, Instagram, like all different social media. Goths are so good at hiding on social media and not going out much.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, you need to care and feeding of goths, right? You need to make them feel comfortable enough in a space. I think a lot of us suffered from depression or anxiety. I didn't really realize how big of a factor anxiety can be until the last few years. And I started noticing it in myself more, maybe because I had taken a break. Brief tangent, we talked before we started about Jez, how she was here in Pittsburgh for a couple of years. I see she's in the chat now. So,
Hi, Jess.
I forget which European country she's in now.
She's in the Netherlands,
yeah.
right?
Okay, right. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of people kind of maybe they'll take a break for a while, especially in their 30s when they're starting careers and raising families, and then it'll be here for them and they'll come back. But anxiety. So, I started experiencing more anxiety when I started to try to get back into it. It was like, am I going to know anybody? Am I going to feel comfortable? It turned out once I went to Cadaver, I started looking really hard at the people all around, at their faces, and I was like, okay, wait, I do remember that person from 10 years ago. And I realized, like, I thought I knew like 4 people there, and then it turned out I knew like half the room, because we keep coming back. Once you've made this your haven and where you connect, like, I think people are drawn back to it. But I try to keep that experience in mind and realize how many people may be suffering from anxiety and a feeling of needing to belong when they walk into a space. And that was one of the things that I really tried to do with our Club Night Obsidian was, I talked to the other 3 DJs, and I was like, we're all DJs, but we're also hosts and hostesses. It's like, I want us to try to greet people when they walk in. If we haven't seen them before, welcome them, try to introduce them to people, make them feel at home, because it's about connection. It's not just playing music, it is scene building. We are trying to build a scene and build a community here. And I think club owners, that's what they look for too. Like, remember I said that club owner of the club, it was Club Laga, was where ceremony was held. The questions he was asking me before he decided if we should give us a chance was, how many listeners do you have?
Right.
How many people do you think would come out? And if you can say, I have 20 people who meet for coffee every Wednesday that want to go out somewhere together, that's the kind of thing that they look for. So you've got to start with building a group of people who want to be together.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
a really
welcome new
important
people
point.
into it.
Yeah, that's a very good point, is that if you're going to be able to go in blind and line up a venue to host a night or whatever, being able to have that collected community already. So that would be the first step, is like congregating everyone. So, and you can do that on social media. You can get like, you can start a Facebook group, like the PGH Goth group for your local scene, and try to get people in from social media. Caroline has found a lot of Norwegian goths on social media. You can find people on the internet, see if they can join your Facebook group. Try some kind of small meetup where you meet up at like a coffee shop. Or I know the Obscura Undead crew at one point, they hosted a cemetery walk. They just had like a bunch of people meet up at a cemetery and go walk through a historical cemetery down there in Tampa. So, events like that can help to start pulling that group together. And once you have that group, that'll give you more leverage to be able to go into local venues, go to the management or ownership of spaces and say, hey, I have this group of people I can bring. If you let me host my event here, I can bring this amount of business to you on a regular basis, and help you drive up your sales at your bar or at your restaurant, or Maybe you could like rent a pavilion at a local park if you're doing an outdoor event, especially with the transition period during this time where people are starting to get vaccinated. There's a lot of avenues that you could take to line up and secure event spaces.
Right. That point that you just made, Kelly, that's a very important distinction because the renting the pavilion at the park, that's for somebody who already has resources and already has enough of a track record that they believe they're going to get those people out and they will make back their investment of renting that place. If you've never done it before, that's where you have to start with is you go to a venue owner who already is going to provide all the resources and say, I'm going to bring your crowd. You give me what I need, I'll bring you the patrons who are going to pay your cover or, buy your alcohol or buy your beverages or do whatever you need to make money. I mean, that was kind of where it started for me was there was this club owner who had just invested so much into creating this space, which that's important too. Can you see the other person's perspective? What are you going to bring to the other person that they need? It's like when you're at a job interview, it's not just, I want to work here because I want to do this. It's,
people want to know what's in it for me.
Yeah.
So how are you going to provide value?
Right. How are you going to provide value? Exactly. So that club owner had this problem is how am I going to fill people? How am I going to fill my club with people? I had a complementary problem. Where can all of my 20, 21-year-old friends go to dance and hang out? So you got to find the common interests. And then once you say, I can bring this many people every week, you better make damn sure you can do it. Or close to it. So follow through, hard work, integrity. We talked about reputation. I see some chatter in the chat about Scary Lady Sarah in Chicago. She's probably my biggest role model, and she's been doing this for over 30 years now. I think maybe 35. Jez, maybe you can chime in. I know Nocturna just had an anniversary, and I can't remember what anniversary it was. It might have even been 40. But she has integrity, she has follow through, and she cares about people. She's somebody you want to talk to and you want to gather around. But it's not just that person's personality; it's what they form around them. So I know people don't just want to talk to me. They know that their friend and their friend's friend and their friend's friend, and they know that they like the other people who are drawn to the kind of music that I like to play. It's if you go into it with it all about you and try to make it all about your own ego, it's not going to work because it's not about a pedestal for yourself. It is about forming a group.
It is a community thing, and the more friends and connections that you make in the local scene, the more you can partner up. You'll be able to help share your crowd. Like you might be able to share patrons. Like if you host an event like once per month, there might be a DJ who hosts another night, and you could tell the people who come to your night about that night and vice versa, and start to like build a community of people that are going out to the club once a week. I know for me, I do a lot of stuff on social media. I'm a music journalist, and a lot of people follow me for my YouTube channel, or they'll follow me on Instagram because I do a lot of covering like bands and shows and stuff on Instagram. I have been out to a few different clubs and nights recently where people have approached me and these are people that I haven't met before, and they recognize me from social media, and they said that they found the event because I shared it out on my Facebook page. And of course I'm going to like promote my friends' events as much as I can, like the local DJs and stuff. What they do for the local scene and community is invaluable, and it means that I have these events to go to. So I try to share that out. And I think there really is like that spirit with the people who are truly passionate about it, who are in it for the love of the scene. They help each other out. They spread the word, and there is that kind of collective spirit about it.
Staying flexible is important too. As mentioned, Facebook is getting more and more difficult. They've spent more effort on monetizing things so that you have to pay for ads to get the word out, which I was happy to do when it was effective. I haven't paid for ads since the pandemic, partly because I am not trying to recoup a rental cost of a venue, but also I was seeing less and less return from it. I think people, and a lot of people are getting having a harder time using Facebook and are looking for other avenues, and it's important to watch that and stay open. Dave, I know you do a lot with Discord. I have only delved into it a little bit. I think I need to do that more. There's other gathering places that make it a lot easier. And so we have to watch out for that and stay nimble and go to the most effective places.
Yeah.
We have to evolve.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about stepping away from the scene and coming back to it. It was my primary focus in my 20s. Now I have a career and a child. And so I let other people take the lead and make the regular nights that are the backbone. I'm very supportive of DJ Satirian and Crash Zero because they're kind of my spiritual descendants, and I support what they do a lot. I also love some of these more indie-based nights. I love the energy of a night like Technique. Sorry, I hate when I lose my train of thought.
I do that all the time.
So stepping away from the scene, you were talking about stepping away from the scene and coming back. And so I think we're kind of like on the theme of like being able to share the responsibility in the community.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So now I try to encourage these other nights to be the backbone. And then I'll look and say, what can I add that doesn't already exist? So that brings a lot of creativity for me, because since I don't have to keep a weekly night going, which is like impossible now. I think now it's all monthlies, which I think is partly because we have the internet as a place to listen to music. In the 90s, there wasn't YouTube yet. There wasn't Spotify. Napster came along near the tail end, but you heard new music by going to the club, and you don't have to do that anymore. I think that's part of why most cities can only support monthlies now. I must be getting hungry because I'm losing my train of thought more often. But okay, so now I can let these younger people have the main nights, and I can say, what can I add that doesn't already exist? What's a creative idea that I haven't seen before? And that's a lot of fun for me. I've done different things, like a Gothic roller skating party. I did a steampunk dance night because I hadn't seen anybody do that. And I love coming up with ideas and packages. I think that there's a live show crowd, and there's a dance night crowd, and there's an overlap crowd. I love doing theme nights. I especially love doing Halloween parties, and encouraging people to dress up to fit a theme, and blending bands and DJs. So I think that's key in how I can collaborate without feeling threatened, which is something that I think can come up for people. Like, if you've been doing something for a long time, you put a lot of energy into it, maybe even money, a lot of time, and you start to attach your identity to it a little bit. If somebody else comes along and you feel like they're doing something in a way that's going to take that away from you, you might start to feel a little bit threatened. So that's important with more established people to be able to collaborate with up-and-comers in a way that benefits everybody and adds to the whole, doesn't take away from any one person. Most people, I think, if you have a good attitude and you care primarily about building the scene, that's not going to happen. I think the problem is when you have maybe newer people that come in that do center their own ego. And maybe they don't have many of their own ideas, and they just see, oh, what that person's doing looks like fun. I want to try to take that over for myself. But if you're doing something for the wrong reasons, generally you eventually fail. So try to take a deep breath and work with people that I appreciate their values, you know. And that's what I look for too when I am being a mentor for other people. And I think that's something that Manny Kleiner has been very good at. And I love what he's doing with this show that we were talking about that isn't finalized yet. But he did look around and say, okay, so to make this happen, I'm going to need to spread out the responsibility and make it so no one person is going to lose too much money. And who might be interested in making this happen. And he saw that there was a variety of people in this scene who might be interested in risking a little bit. And so he approached all of us, and we all said yes. And so we made an agreement to make it happen. And it's really exciting to see stuff like that.
Yeah, what an awesome group too. I feel like all three people that will be promoting this show with are in some ways like have a little more of like been mentors in some way to me, or shown me the ropes a little bit, kind of like pointed me in the right direction. You, Erica, and Manny have all been like very supportive and encouraging, and it's never felt like I need to like compete with people in the local scene. You're all very like enthusiastic about like, yes, get involved. Like Erica has said, like, I can teach you how to use like DJ equipment. Manny said, I can get you into show promoting. Come co-pro shows with me. We can split the cost. You've brought me on to be like a guest on your virtual shows, and it's like such a supportive community that I found here locally, and that's so important for keeping a local scene going and keeping it healthy.
Well, part of that is because you're so supportive of all of us, which that's a big key that I think a lot of people miss. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I'm getting more interested in Twitch now is because I realized it's not just about, here's my TV station, come watch my show. Twitch is becoming more of a community. Like, we are to the point now where it's not like, I don't think of it so much as there's 3 competing Goth streams on this same night, and they shouldn't be doing that. I think of it more as, okay, it's Friday night, I'm going to log on to Twitch, and I'm going to hop around, and I'm going to see all my friends.
Yeah.
And so that makes me want to do it more. I'm planning to start a regular dark wave stream once I finish remodeling that bedroom that I need, where I'm going to set things up. But part of how you get more followers on Twitch, I've realized, is because you are watching someone else's stream and you're commenting in the chat, and then people are like, oh, I want to check out what you're doing, and that DJ may give you a shout out. One of the people who is the best at that actually is DJ Kangle. I really admire his stream, and I'd like to set things up more like that. I do like streams now where you are just seeing the background of their house and people are setting up a lot of decorations. I like what you did for our Goth Around the World stream, KellyA, how you have the posters in the background and everything. So I'd like to do that, but it's fun to see them actually feel like they're standing in front of you, I really like to see the song that's playing and have that be across the screen. And then have a microphone where you can talk along with the music. So I love what Kangle will do, where he sees somebody come into the chat and he gives them a shout out immediately. And he makes you feel welcome, and he makes you feel part of things. And then there are these commands, I think it's, exclamation point plug. If you have that set up for your channel, and we'll plug that person's stream, and then people can go follow them. And it's just everybody supporting everybody else, getting everybody else followers. Was it a rising tide lifts all boats? I like that philosophy a lot.
I love that. Yeah, it's collective spirit, and I think Goth is a community, a community-based, small arts community scene. It's very much like a grassroots sort of thing, and grassroots movements don't take motion unless a lot of people are pitching in and on board for a common goal and a common cause. And for us, it's having a good thriving scene, being able to share this passion, share music, share that sense of community.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see. And I think the past few years especially, I feel like year over year I see more and more of that sense of community and coming together, and I love the direction that it's heading, even during such a tragic time as like a global pandemic. The goth community was able to come together and create something beautiful in spite of that.
Definitely. Yeah, watching the zeitgeist, what's happening next, and incorporating these new technologies and these new ways of coming together is, I think, going to be the next thing
Yeah.
to happen after the pandemic. I was already trying to bring in more multimedia. I got a projector and I had a screen, I have a portable screen, and I was setting that up on the stage at a lot of my events. A lot of DJs were starting to do that, bring in music videos to play along with their music. And the software was headed that way too. There are VJs, like you can DJ a song that's attached to a video and like mix those together. Just how many elements can we add to make things immersive and experience things on all levels? So I know you wanted to talk about
the business side of things with a little less than a half hour left. This is something where I don't think there's a lot of information out there online, and we're not going to give numbers, but I did want to talk a little bit about like the structure of how things work when it comes to like cost versus payment, who pays for what, who gets paid and how. You mentioned cover charges. So for venues, we were talking about venue spaces and like the park idea. If you rent a park pavilion and do an outdoor event, well, if you're renting a space, then obviously if you have a cover charge, like the organizers, the promoters are going to retain that cover charge to cover the cost. If you're providing all the resources, you're renting the venue, you're providing all the resources, you have a cover charge, that's going to go to you to cover those costs for that. But if you're promoting, like DJing a dance night or promoting a show at a venue like a bar or a restaurant where the owner's letting you in to use their space, how does that usually work with cover charges? Does the venue get a portion of the cover charge and the promoters get a portion of the cover charge? How does that typically go?
I think the most common scenario is the DJs get the door and the bar gets the alcohol sales, but it does vary a lot. When we first started that dance night ceremony in the 90s, it was just the bar owner paid us a flat rate every week, and that's what we got. And as 20-somethings, it seems generous to us. Over the years, I mean, I still think it was fair, but I think as we gained confidence, we became more like entrepreneurs, and we're like, we could see, here's the value that we bring. And so then it became a little more about going to a venue and just striking a deal with them. Different venues have different policies set up. Some of them, especially ones that maybe they're geared more toward local bands, and so they may have things set up as a percentage to really motivate that band to bring their friends, and if you bring your crowd out, then you get more of the door. So that's a common scenario. I often prefer to rent a space when I'm doing a concert, so that it's a flat rate and I know what I have to pay them. So that rate I think should be enough so that their costs are covered. They can pay their staff their agreed upon amount for the night and pay their electricity and all of that. And then they are going to do better. If I bring more people in, they're going to sell more alcohol. And so that's how they will get more based on how many people come in. But it's very helpful to me to have a flat rate like that when I'm trying to negotiate a guarantee for a touring band, because they have a set amount they need to cover their touring costs. They have to be able to pay for their gas to get from one city to the next. They have to be able to eat that day, and they have to have a place to sleep. So I keep all that in mind when I'm negotiating, and I don't offer any deals that I think are less than their basic expenses, because I think that's insulting. You shouldn't have to pay to play. It should be set up so that you're not going to lose money. I try to make it so there's a good chance that everybody's going to break even. And if everybody works hard and does well, that everybody's going to make some money and that it's going to be fairly distributed. Just like when a band is planning a whole tour, there may be some nights where they may lose a little bit of money or might not make very much, but they need to make something on that night to get them to the next city where there is going to be a big show. So sometimes you can negotiate a little bit less if you're a stop somewhere. Like we're a stop on the way from, Philly to Cleveland. So there are some bands that have played for less here just because they have to come through here anyway. They might as well make some money. And I always try to give people what's fair, but maybe there may be a situation where not a lot of people know them. It's a big risk. I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose money, but we'll come up with a number that is something where I don't think I'm going to lose too much money and they will make something. So it's worthwhile for everybody. There's negotiation that's involved. There's some set standards, but it's at the end of the day, it's like any business arrangement, you try to figure out what's going to benefit everybody and minimize risk. And because my motivation is generally that I want people to hear the music that I love, and I want to build a scene, and I want to encourage awesome music, I will often make deals where there's not a big chance for me to make money. But that is going to allow people to get what they need and make the show happen. And I think people can sense that. Like I've had people say things like, "Oh, you're one of the good ones,"
Yeah. It's not an easy way to get rich. If you're trying to make a ton of money and get rich, promoting shows and events and DJing and stuff is not the thing you should be doing to make money and get rich. But it is important to know those things because there are costs that need to be covered when it comes to putting on events, and that's the big thing is having the resources to make it happen, to sustain the events and community.
Yeah. Well, on the flip side too, though, if a promoter does make some money, then they're better able to do the next show and keep things going.
Right.
So that's important too. So I don't think anybody should begrudge a promoter making some money. And then you also have to think about how just like a band has to average their costs of their entire tour and just hope that they can stay in the black for the whole tour, I may look at and say, how can I stay in the black for an entire year? So I may do a show that, that's going to lose a little bit of money, but it's really important for me personally to get the music out, or it's going to make a connection with this booking agent that is booking this other band that I really want to bring and that will be more profitable so that my entire year doesn't lose money and continues the brand that I want to establish. So my brand is Dark Wave, and I try to keep my my niche in mind. That's important too. Like, are you offering something no one else is? So we've got a great industrial promoter, Jim Smonik, who brings a ton of shows, and he does bring some of the bands that I really like too. He definitely does bring some dark wave bands. We've got the more post-punk crowd.
Erica and Aaron, are definitely like the post-punk promoters.
Yeah, but there is this kind of area in between that isn't covered quite as strongly, and that is my favorite stuff. And so I can focus on them, and I try to put that out there. Like, if you're a dark wave band, especially one that has some deep roots, please come to me, and I'll try to make it happen. If I can't, though, I'm gonna recommend you to one of those other people. And sometimes I'll even encourage you to go to them first. And then if someone else isn't able to make a show happen, I'll work on it for you, especially if it's near and dear to my heart. Because I'm not going to be as concerned about whether it's going to make money as whether people are going to get to hear your awesome music that deserves to be heard by the whole world.
Yeah, and I am not a promoter, but I like a little bit of all of that stuff. So I know a lot of the people in the local scene where it's I've got a passion for this, and if anyone wants to pull in other people or someone that they trust because they want to spread the costs so they can spread the liability and stuff like that. And that's why I'm going into co-pro for a show, and I'm interested in co-proing. There's enough people I think that are primary promoters right now that I'm not out there trying to be a primary promoter, but I do like I'm here to like co-pro if there are like promoters that I support that want to like split that cost and liability, because I think the local promoters that know me know that I am like reliable and that I'd be able to like come in and help out if they wanted to put on something bigger that maybe would be a lot of risk for one person to take on, but is like less of a risk to bring in multiple people for. And that's something that if you are somewhere where you do have a local scene but you want to get involved and you want to help out, get to know the local promoters, and maybe they will give you opportunities where you can help co-pro shows, help work shows, and that's another way that people kind of like cut down on the risk of the cost, because there usually is a risk with like promoters going into like shows, especially for like niche shows like this. So we're talking about goth underground music. It's niche. You don't know if you're going to have a guaranteed turnout. And there is a certain level of risk, and there are plenty of like shows and clubs where the promoter might lose a little bit of money. So that's why people do the like co-proing and like splitting it across a bunch of people that just want to see these great bands come in. They're spreading that risk around so no one person like loses too much money. And so that's for anyone who has a local scene who wants to get involved in promoting shows. That's a great way to do it, is to like kind of establish a rapport with like the local promoters and offer to help co-pro, because I'm sure there are some shows where they wouldn't mind spreading that risk a little bit if they feel like they can depend on someone to be a good co-pro.
Yeah, it's very important, I think, to show that you understand the other person's point of view, that you appreciate what they're going through, that they are taking on a risk. And like you just said, though, if you want to help them, you do need to show that you are dependable and somebody that they can trust, because you're going to affect their long-term reputation, So, I mean, Kelly, you are somebody that should be doing this. Like, you are a good person to get more into promotion, and it's very obvious. And so people want your help and want to get you involved. So for somebody who is starting out, I think it's important to just to demonstrate that, reliability, dedication, I think, and some good instincts, a willingness to work hard because you want something to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of just goes to show that a lot of places that do have thriving local scenes, that have like local club nights, local shows, and Pittsburgh. I think some people can take Pittsburgh for granted, but we really got a lot of great stuff going on here, and it goes to show you that when you're putting together events and shows at a certain level, it does take a certain amount of collaboration. So we've kind of like gone through like talking about starting small, like Caroline's coffee meetups in Norway, like finding goths on social media, starting there, and kind of like building up to like finding venues, finding other promoters, finding other DJs. And that's kind of your spectrum of like starting small and then growing from there, and kind of circling back to the business side of things. So when you book bands to play shows, is it typically the band gets like a flat rate up front and then they make money off of merch sales, or does the band ever like do bands get like portions of the door? How does that usually work?
It really varies. For touring acts, I tend to work with a booking agent, and in this underground scene, there tend to only be a few that have been doing things for a long time. I think we talked about, some of the same people that I worked with 20 years ago are now booking tours through me. So better not ever screw somebody over in this scene, because then you are done. You have to show your worth. But so different people kind of have different ways of doing things. I do know some promoters that will only do door deals. They're like, I'm not losing money, and if you want to play here, this is how it's going to be. I think most booking agents like to negotiate a guarantee. Most booking agents that I work with try to just negotiate a flat rate guarantee, what I like to do is offer a guarantee that's slightly less than what they ask for, but then offer a back end, so that once you have a certain number of people, everybody gets a percentage. And so I try to set that number at something where I think everybody's going to be able to break even, and then if it does well, everybody makes some money. I want to be fair, minimize the effect of anybody losing money.
So like a break even guarantee and split the proceeds beyond that level.
Yeah. So and there's different levels of doing things. A lot of these underground bands that we like, their guarantees, they don't tend to ask above a certain level. And I mean, it varies, but so like the budget for one of my typical events is often maybe between $1,000 and $2,000, and so, but that's including everything. I think that's a misconception that some people will have. Like, there'll be a band that will say, "Hey, can I, will you do a show for me? Can I play at this club?" And you can give me $1,000, right? You only have to have 100 people pay $10 a piece to pay me that. And then you're like, "But what about the club? They have to have some money. They may need a percentage. What about advertising? I have to pay the sound engineer. There's all these other costs. You have to figure all of those into your budgets." For me, I like to do themed events, and people enjoy coming to those. But part of what makes that work is maybe some decorations and things like this, where you may not be able to quantify that as like, me buying these plastic pumpkins is going to bring this many more people to my Halloween show. Like, you can't really do that, but it's part of the atmosphere that I'm trying to set, and that makes this annual event a tradition for people. So there's all these factors that different people
right
have to consider.
So like that's like overhead cost is
right.
Stuff like that. So what about like other people working the event that aren't necessarily like working the bar, like someone at the door that's going to be collecting cover fees or like tickets and stuff like that? Is that typically staff that works at a venue, or is that someone that's helping out with the promoter?
I've seen it done both ways. Personally, I tend to trust the venue to handle that, and often it's because I may be working mostly on my own, and I tend to be very trusting. I also know promoters that do not, would never allow someone else to touch their money. Maybe they bring in their own till and their own start bank. It's just like we were talking about how you have to be flexible and watch what's happening with technology and what's happening with the scene and what do people need. A lot of this comes into play too when you're deciding how to set up your financials. It's like, what does this individual, how are things already happening at this venue? How do they normally do things with other promoters? Does that work for me? Do I need to ask for an adjustment? There is a certain amount of variation, but I think the bottom line is you have to understand that everyone else's needs. Just look around and try to see other people's perspectives. What value can I bring to this band, to this owner, to this audience? What kind of show haven't we had in a while? That's something that I do. So I lean slightly pagan now, and so I love the kind of the wheel of the year, the turn of the seasons, and I think even if people don't recognize it at a conscious level now, they are tuned into that. We have these yearly rituals. We like to celebrate Halloween. There's the back to school. There's the dead of winter and needing to find a little bit of light somewhere in there. There's a primal need for people to come together and celebrate at these times. And so I try to tap into that. It's like, we're Goths. We want to have a big Halloween event. And so there have definitely been times where I'm like, how can I provide that? What do I want to see in my Halloween? What kind of over-the-top excitement would I want to have, and how can I provide that to other people? So it's any kind of a business is providing a service that people need, and it's the same thing with trying to do a Goth event.
Yeah.
My friend Dee was in the chat asking me how much those angel wings cost. I did a themed event in 2002, I did a hell themed party and a heaven themed party. The heaven themed party featured Rasputina, and I had these girls dressed in white, wearing white angel wings, with silver trays of white roses and angel food cake, passing them out. And my friend Dee was the head angel, and we had 2 or 3 other girls. So, I mean, the main draw was Rasputina. Most of the people were probably going to come anyway, but it added a little something extra. Our club night happened downstairs afterward, and then, it was also tied to the hell themed party that had happened before, so it just added to this overall making something bigger than where it started. I think that's my goal.
That's awesome. And I wanted to kind of like add a disclaimer, or I guess I wanted to mention that I'm definitely not knocking anyone who makes money. If like DJs, promoters, bands are able to make money doing what they love, I think that is amazing. But I wanted to clarify that we're not having this discussion with the goal of like or so people can learn how to make money so much as for the purposes of building a goth scene, you do need to secure certain resources to put on events. And that's where the business side comes into play, where how are those resources secured? How are those costs covered? And it's something that you need to know how that works if you're going to put on events and organize these things. If you can make money doing what you love and be able to keep your scene thriving and do that, that's amazing. But the baseline level of why that's good to know is for like building a local scene, securing the resources. How do you secure the venue? How do you get the bands in? How does all of that work? Because you need to know those things if you're going to make events happen.
Right. And the resources really vary. Everybody has different resources. So how do you work with those as best you can? If you do have a little bit of money and you are going to rent a space, and then your goal can be just you have a little more control in that situation to do things the way you want to do them. If you believe in it, your ultimate goal is that it doesn't lose money. But your resource could just be the people. I mean, when I was 20, I was flat broke. I was making minimum wage at a record store. I covered guarantees sometimes by betting my rent money, which I don't recommend. But
yeah, don't do that, folks.
But I think what's important about that is I had enough dedication that I was going to make sure that band got paid, whatever it took. I knew maybe I would need to go to the ATM and eat ramen the next week if my gamble didn't pay off, but I was going to make sure they got paid, and I think people sensed that. But my real resource that I had at that time was the people. I was seeing this group of 150 people come out to this dance night every week. I knew we had this built-in crowd, and they were going to want to be together. And so that gave me some opportunities to present bands that they may not have been familiar with. And I got to play one of their singles every week for 2 months and get people dancing to it, and then announce, hey, they're coming to play here in person. Just you use what you have, and having a community is a resource in itself. And like we said earlier, if you can present that to a club owner, that's important too. And I think that you should usually start there. And once you have some indication that you can bring people out regularly, then it's worth taking the gamble of, I'm going to rent this space and do something more like what I want to do.
Yeah. And it's really that determination. Like, you just got to make it work with whatever resources you have at your disposal. If you're determined, where there's a will, there's a way.
Right. If you have the passion and you show some responsibility and dedication as well, you can make it work.
Absolutely. So we have a few minutes left here. Kelly, your story is just so interesting. Like, what you do for the local scene, so amazing. Like, it's really been incredible listening to you talk about all of this. Is there anything that you want to share with our viewers? Any projects? Any kind of final thoughts?
Well, thanks for asking. I will quickly do my plugs. So my Twitch channel is DJ KellyA. I am on kind of sporadically, but I'm thinking of starting a regular dark wave night on Thursdays. So if you're not following me on Twitch, please do so, DJ KellyA, and you'll get the notifications about that. And then I do a monthly podcast called the Movie Channels Podcast, and that is on Mixcloud, mixcloud.com/DJ KellyA. It's 2 hours long. It's all dark wave and in dark wave adjacent music that's been released within the last 4 months. And I'll usually have 5 sets where I have breaks, and I'll talk a little bit about the bands and their history. And then I'll post about that and link to all the bands on Facebook and try to get them more attention, and just try to show people, here's the new music that I'm excited about. And that's my main goal with that, is just to promote new music.
And I dropped the links to both your Twitch channel and your Mixcloud in the live chat. For those who are watching this back on YouTube, that will be in the description. Dave, Caroline, any final thoughts from you two?
This was really great to get some insight into the logistics, into all of this, since I'm like kind of in the process, hopefully soon, to actually get out there and do this stuff.
Yeah, it's been very, very informative listening in here, and thank you.
Yeah, and
I'm glad.
for those watching, we have not finalized our episode for next month quite yet. We're in the process of doing so. So make sure to like Gothy Roundtable on Facebook to get information about the guest time and topic for next month. We usually post those as Facebook events. Any closing remarks from anyone in the group? All right.
Thanks for
so
having me.
thank
Go
you.
forth and make great goth events, everybody.
Yeah, thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone in the live chat. Thank you for everyone for watching, as always. Thank you, Dave and Caroline. And thank you so much, DJ KellyA, for being our guest. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next month.
All right, thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.